Well, so thanks for joining us for AM Talk. Now, my guest in the studio is Kwabena Mankwa Isiama. He's a member of parliament for Fantiakwa North. It's in the eastern region. He's also a member of the MPP, though. And we're grateful to have him in the studio. As much as possible, we'll try and get another personality, Ebenezer Okleti Telabi, as we announced earlier on. He's a member of parliament for Lower Manya-Krobo constituency in the eastern region, a member of the NDC, had been a former government minister before. Then we'll have a lot more insight to talk about. On the front pages, displayed pictures of the former professor at the University of Ghana, who is currently with Central University College, and we have Professor Prof Yankah, and he'd been talking about tackling corruption. And already on the front page of the Daily Graphic, Kendapa is advocating for Shraj appointees, others to be vetted, and we don't know whether it means anything at all. And we'll also be looking at whether the power badges will be coming in, because we have a team of journalists currently in Turkey and looking at the subject of the power badges. And so far, some of the things we're getting are not too good as far as whether when they will come and if they'll come at all. Okay, so we'll be discussing all that. The president of the Central University College, Professor Prof Yankah, says the presidency is now a safe haven for corruption. That's according to him. It is widely believed that the tendency of government appointees embroiled in corruption scandals to later find work at the presidency is making that office a comfortable refuge for the corrupt, and want to listen to him. He was giving a lecture yesterday.
And known of several known anti-corruption crusaders appointed within the presidency who appear to have made little or no impact in mitigating the current perception of corruption in the presidency. I refer also to one anti-corruption activist of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. In his most recent public statement, Mr. Batidam appears less enthusiastic in urging leadership to lead in the fight against corruption. The presidential advisor on corruption advocates that systems rather than the president himself should lead the fight against corruption. He adds that it is undemocratic to expect the presidency to lead the anti-corruption drive. Mahama is not a judge, he says. And with such a lame excuse for the lack of anti-corruption initiatives within the presidency, one would indeed wonder whether the terms of reference in Batidam's appointment letter would be, since his boss is not a judge. But need I forget Boabia Samwa, formerly also of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, whose credentials may have led to his appointment within the presidency of the Kufuor government, working in the office of the vice president. His impact on the anti-corruption within the Kufuor presidency, like others, remains unknown. So is the accountability office that was established within that presidency.
Well, following this, we had a swift rebuttal from an official of government, a minister of state at the presidency in charge of PPPs of private sector, Rashid Purple, giving us a response.
I don't agree with that. I think that there is some presupposition that when somebody is accused of something, it is a definite decision or it's a definite situation where the person is actually indicted and found guilty. We definitely believe that when somebody is corrupt, he should be exposed. It is our avowed expectation that corrupt people should be punished for it. The law must be made to work. In the case of situations where people are accused and the public have doubts about who the credentials or the credibility of that person, the person should no longer be in office. To the extent that he interacts with the public as if nothing has happened, some decision has to be taken. But until a clear-cut decision is taken that that fellow is guilty of a certain crime spelled out by law, you cannot, by all measure of imagination, accuse the person of being guilty of a particular crime. So if the presidency thinks that somebody is no longer fit for a certain job, especially because of failures to deliver according to policy prescriptions, and the presidency withdraws the person, it will not suggest that that fellow was particularly corrupt and failed as a corrupt person, and therefore sent to the presidency, as a safe haven.
But we don't know what the real picture is as far as what the perception also is out there. We'll try and get onto the street and seek the views of Ghanaians. But Mr. Isiama is in the studio. And from the observations that have been made, and especially from what the perception is, it doesn't seem to go positively for government on this very direction, does it?
Yes. Thank you very much. And I would like to say a big good morning to your viewers and listeners, especially people from Fantiakwa and my delegates, not forgetting them, because it's coming on.
Yes.
Definitely. Yes, for corruption and its relation to this very particular government, I think it did not go far when they assumed of it that people started tagging them about corruption, especially when the almighty judgment that was ruled in by this NDC previous government. People realized that no, they have come not to actually seek the welfare of the people, but to milk from the people, you see. And thereon, it has been something that people have ever maintained till now, and it's like they've been proved right according to all instances, and what has been happening since the third NDC and this fourth NDC. So the perception is rife, and it's like people are believing it, that actually...
But Mr. Siama, you do know that perception is not the reality. And to what extent, as political players, do you tend to equate what the perception is of the people out there to mean that this really is what happens?
Well, when there is a perception of something, for instance, a corruption as against this government, it must be seen that the government is doing everything possible within its means to stop corruption. But if it's not being stopped for that matter, and people think it keeps going on and the center cannot hold, then people might believe that really it is not a hoax, but it's the real. So, and people have believed that, because if you take cognizance of some instances that corruption has emerged, and the way the government has tried to curtail it or make sure that fairness is done or justice is done to the culprits, you can very well stick your head out or neck out and say that the government is not fully prepared to stamp out.
At what point would you say a government is committed or not if there's an act of corruption? When you know, for example, people have even been put before trial or currently in court. We've had committees set up that have done an enormous investigations into various issues and allegations raised. Even we've had various commissions set up. They have also investigated adequately as to what the nuances of the subjects and the discussions were. So how do we draw those conclusions? On what basis?
Yes, it's not going to court alone that determines that one is fully prepared or it's in the game to stop or stamp out corruption. Not at all. If, for instance, you take the Woyomi case, for instance, the in and out and the hula baloo that engulfed that incident clearly showed that government officials, for that matter, were not fully committed and prepared. They schemed the whole saga with the intention that it may die off and the nation will lose the money. But it was not going, because the citizens vigilante, for instance, made sure that no, this is something against the state that we should not let wash off. And he actually followed that to the letter, and he has received some great results. So if you compare that to that of the president trying to stop corruption and the way his officers were treating, especially the Wyoming case, you could dichotomize that the government and its officials, for that matter, were not fully prepared to stop corruption. Citing that as an
you are a political leader, for example. You're a member of parliament having been voted for. You have a large following in your party based on the vote you may have garnered or your interactions with your constituents in your area. Now, if, let's say, Professor Yankah is now observing that corruption in Ghana's public life is rapidly undermining the future of several generations to come, and feels that those in the helm of political and public life are not leading the way, that also, in many respects, is an indictment on even you. You may be in opposition, but it doesn't matter, does it?
Yes, for that matter, you see, when they say public and political life, the basket contains a lot. And it's left with leadership to make sure that some of these corruption tax are very well stamped out and well dealt with transparently, without trying to shelve others when corruption rears their head. So this is something that has made people believe that once it's one politician, it's all politicians. And once it's one public officer, it's all public officers. That is why he's bringing that there. So he tried to, widen up what he was saying, but he zoomed down to the presidency, and that the president was shelving some people who are known to be corrupt people. And for that matter, it's against the government. And if it's against the government, then it's against government appointees, and for that matter also politicians. So that is why he's saying that. It's
okay,
not every politician.
we have to go to the streets and speak to some members of the public, and then we'll be right back in the studio. We'll wrap up on this very subject of perceived corruption, especially in the presidency.
The president wouldn't allow his people to deliberately steal, and then for him to, hide on what they are doing. No, I wouldn't say that. He's a man of integrity, and then I believe he wouldn't do such a thing.
But what of the officials who, after they have spent on the state's coffers, they are reassigned at the presidency?
Oh yeah, it's work. They've qualified to do the work, and then probably they've defaulted in one way or the other, and then probably they can do better at the other office. Why not? I don't think he will deliberately hide them in his wings for them to be doing such a thing.
My problem is, if they say that somebody corrupt, you have to sack the person. Don't take the person to change him another position again. You have to sack him to bring another person to come and do the job. But now they say that something like Anas Mohammed can go Tema to go and see a lot of people have been making corruption there. Instead of to sack the person, you are not sacking them. They say you have to go back to North. And you have to come back to Accra. All of them have been more. The corrupted have been making more. But if you sack somebody, or if you catch somebody like this to take them to court, let them take the person to the court. If you take the person to court, they fine them, or they seize one of your house. I think the other guys too, they say that, hey, Chile, the government make one law. Now you start taking them to court. So they'll do that, they will stop it. But I didn't see that the government come out to say, you have to go out. From today going, don't come and do government work. They're just changing them. That's why the corrupting, they make more.
Well, so mixed reactions there as far as that is concerned. Now, from what the public is saying, for example, we've had some investigation undertaken by Anas, and that has also been alluded to. At the end of the day, some actions were taken. But the public will still think it's not satisfactory. But we live in a country where we say we go by the tenets of rule of law, and you just don't arbitrarily just dismiss people and try to take actions which do not follow due process.
Yeah, that's right. Present dispensation does not allow us to, take people and just put them anywhere that the person who is responsible should do. But the law must take its course, yes. And information, for instance, is very, very important and prime to the stoppage of corruption. If somewhere along the line you see that a particular case has been truncated and you don't hear anything about it, or you see government machinery or government commentators or government officials defending the person who has been tagged as corrupt, then definitely you will say that yes, the government is not committed to. When I will still cite, because it's a quintessential case. When you're talking about corruption, I will cite the Wyoming matter. You see, a lot of government commentators, right, were defending this case to the hilt, which people thought, why should this happen? And there are several other cases that government commentators have defended, like when you go to the case that was at the Supreme Court on the vehicles, the vehicles that were imported here, and CP. Government commentators were defending all these cases, but Ghana had lost money.
So at the end of the day, you feel the actions of government itself doesn't portray outrightly to the citizenry generally?
Yes, because
that is a commitment.
The way government commentators and government officials posit themselves to defend, you see, such cases, it's also earning or gaining currency that the government is not prepared to stop corruption.